Okay, Joel, will you go on your Facebook and see if you can see me live? It starts in a few minutes, but I already pressed it to go live.
Where's your art studio?
What?
Did you change your picture?
No, you have to go to YouTube.
Oh. Yep.
You can see me?
Yeah.
You can see me?
Yeah. What's that?
You're probably too close, so you'll probably have to go out of it. So can you hear me, the overworked gardener? Oh, excellent. You know, this is my very first live, and so I thought I better go on, even though I'd scheduled it, I better go on a little bit early in case it wasn't working right. Have you started planting your garden yet? Or any seeds or anything like that? Here in Wyoming, I have seeds started and I have little seedlings, but I can't plant anything outside. Though I have the seedlings in the greenhouse and I have a heat lamp in there, so it hasn't got below freezing. So it looks like we have like 9 minutes on my computer. Hi, Unpaved Explorer. How are you? So if anything starts going weird, it starts buffering, anything like that, make sure you guys tell me, because I might not be able to see it on my side because this is my first live, so I don't know. I had Joe turn off his computer because when he had his computer on so close to me, I could hear these weird feedback screech noises. Is it that all the way gone now? Excellent. So today, what I thought I would talk about, since you guys are already here, is like I'm from Wyoming, and so we can only do cleanup and things like that right now. Though I have done some pruning and some chipping, and we've moved some bags of leaves around. What have you guys been doing? Hi, Millennium Homesteaders. How are ya? How cold are you guys up in British Columbia? Okay, so since we already have some people here, I am going to start even though we're not quite at 4 o'clock, and then I think probably everybody will just come in. Oh, good. Thank you. I wasn't sure how Joe gave me a little camera because I couldn't get my camera to work on my computer. And so I have a little one that I've just plugged into a USB drive. And so I was hoping that the camera would be good. We are cold too, just like up in British Columbia. We were 3 degrees this morning when we got up, and I'm not really sure what that is in Celsius. And yesterday we probably had about 6 inches of snow when I got up, where we had been 60 degrees before then. And so that was a big change. I was really hoping early spring, but we'll see. We still could have early spring, so I'm not really sure. What are you going to plant, Overworks Gardener? Your regular garden, are you starting in some pots or some seedlings? Now, things that we did, I'm glad you're not the only one that has snow. We have, actually, Montana is supposed to get some more snow again, so that means that we will probably get some more snow again. Hi, Marie. How are you? Marie is from Salon Girl Gardens, and she's down in Texas. And her and I, we were the first to do the seed pack. We're sharing a box of seeds, and so it's going around the country. And right now, I think it's on its way to North Carolina. So today, because I wanted to be able to answer garden questions if somebody had a question. I've been a master gardener for a long, long time. I'm actually the president of the Master Gardeners for Wyoming for 2020 and 2021. And so I thought maybe we could share some ideas, and maybe you had some tips or tricks that I could share, and I would try to do that also. But for right now, what we're doing in Wyoming is garden cleanup. We had some really nice days, so I figured, why not take advantage of 60-degree weather before we got the snow? And so Joe and I, my husband, we have just been crazy fools cleaning up and chipping and chopping. And we moved our rabbits, and we stacked up all of my beehives that I'm not using, the extra hives, the supers. And so we've tried to be very busy. Oh, 47 different types of tomatoes. I always grow that many tomatoes too. I think I have close to 40 this year also. The rabbits are very good. You know, so I had the first two, and Babs and Penelope. And then I got 4 other ones. And then one morning I went out, and the 4 little ones had pushed where you send the feed thing through. They'd pushed that out, and it had fallen out, and all 4 of them were out. And so then I was on the search. Now, I did eventually captured all of them, but one of them had really like a respiratory thing when we caught him. It had been cold that night, and he eventually didn't make it. So I have the 3 little ones instead of 4 now. Now, how many of you guys have fruit trees? Because right now is a great time to be pruning your fruit trees. And so I've taken some time and I started pruning, but I have a whole bunch more to prune. And so all my tomatoes and all my peppers and things like that are in the greenhouse. And with the heat lamp that I have in there, I think they will be perfect. I went in there today when it was about 13 degrees outside, and it was about 60 degrees in there. Do any of you guys have greenhouses or hoop houses that you guys use? Like up in British Columbia, do you guys use any kind of hoop house or low tunnels or anything like that with your gardens? So are you about to plant your 47 different types of tomatoes since you're in Texas? That is interesting, because I wasn't sure anybody was as crazy about tomatoes as I was. Now, what happened in Wyoming last fall is the leaves all started to drop, and then all of a sudden there was like snow, and the snow really never left. So where I usually collect so many bags of leaves from different people, I probably collected about half as many. And so it's been way crazy that I can actually, now that some of the snow had gone on those 2 nice days, it was drying up so that I could rake it. But now we have 6 inches of snow again. And so I'm back to square one on that project. Marie, you have 27 tomatoes in the ground? Tell us what kind of tomatoes you have. And has everybody ordered or bought all the seeds that they need so far? Because from what I'm hearing, Baker Seeds and all kinds of other seed companies are way out of their seeds. And I think it's probably because so many people have already, they have decided, I have to have a garden this year because of all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world. And you already have a red tomato, or you just have a regular tomato and it hasn't turned red yet? If you haven't seen Marie's video on how she started her seeds inside, you should check it out. It is so phenomenal. And another thing that to order right now, just because a lot more people are ordering than they usually do, is I think if you are gonna have maybe fruit trees or berry bushes or any kind of shrubs, you might really consider trying to buy those online before they pop up into any stores, just so that you can get the varieties that you want. And Marie says that Walmart here has a sign out that says you can't buy seeds because they're not essential. Really? That is so unusual, because like at our Walmart and Menards and Home Depot, there's all kinds of seeds. So that's interesting, but you guys are much warmer than us. And so that's really interesting. But I haven't started anything seed-wise like watermelons or cantaloupes or other melons or cucumbers. Have you guys started any of those? Yeah, sometimes you can get seeds and for some weird reason they just won't start. And I have actually even taken some of those that didn't start, and I'll put them in the refrigerator for a few days in the soil still. And then I'll take them back out and let them warm up really slowly. And sometimes it will just trigger them to start, which is a weird thing because you wouldn't think that would happen. But I have seen it do it. Ashley, how are you from the UK? Thanks for stopping by. And another thing that we have this store that's called Baumgart's. It's kind of like a farm store. And they always get their bags of potatoes in early. And so a few weeks ago, we were over there and we bought potatoes. And because it's too cold to put them in the ground right now, I like to take about 2-gallon pots, and I'll put about 4 inches of soil in there. I'll put, depending on the size of the potato, because I don't cut my potatoes. I will put 3 to 5, depending on what size of potato they are, and then I'll put soil in them. And they don't really need sunlight until they actually break through the soil. But I moved them out into the hoop house, and so it won't freeze in there because of the heat lamp. And so then you can have potatoes 3 weeks earlier than you would otherwise. And I started doing that easily 5 years ago. And it just made it so that I would have potatoes early. And the ones that a lot of times I would buy a 50-pound bag, and sometimes I wouldn't plant all them. So I would plant those in the pots and then sell them at the farmer's market. And I would sell them, depending on the size of the pot, about $5. And it was a great way to pay for all my potatoes. And I just thought it was economical. I was getting rid of my extra ones, and those extra ones were paying for all my potatoes that I was putting in the ground. And I always try to put some in the ground that I'll hill up with either soil or straw or leaves. And then I'll try to put some in great big huge pots. And one of the tricks for potatoes, have you ever grown potatoes and they got just beautiful, wonderful plants and you didn't hardly have any potatoes? So my rule of thumb is that I never fertilize potatoes after July 1st. Now, if you're starting your potatoes much earlier than what we can in Wyoming, you'll back that out some. But it just makes it so that the energy goes to the potatoes and not to the plant. And another thing I have done is when the plants get about a foot or 18 inches tall, I'll just cut them in half. It's just like topping them like you would a pepper. And that seems to work really well. And I mean, it, like Marie says, it is a crazy time out here. And so we just have to really change the way we do stuff. And I too have some columnar apple trees, and we've had them for, I think 3 years now. And I love that they don't take up hardly any space. They're very, linear, and they are just loaded with apples. Oh, yeah, Maria, I can talk about fertilizing potatoes. Now, you don't want to start fertilizing them till after you've peeled them up, probably the first time. And I like to use a fish emulsion, or I like to use compost that I made myself. And if I'm using the compost, all I do is go down both sides about 4 inches from the base of the plant, and I just put that compost down there. If I'm using a liquid fertilizer, then I will just make a circle around each plant. And with the potatoes are not really a heavy feeder. So that's why if you feed them too much, it makes all those leaves. And so it's much better to back off on the fertilizer, because sometimes we think because potatoes and tomatoes are in the same family, they should have the same nutrient needs, but they don't. A tomato is very heavy feeder. It wants to have a lot of fertilizer, but a potato doesn't need that. And so just once they come out of the ground and you've healed them up that first time, then just take compost down about 4 inches from the plant all the way down your rows. Or if you're growing them in pots, just make it all the way around it, but still about 4 inches away. Where the liquid fertilizer, it can actually even touch the leaves. I don't try to touch the leaves, but it's not going to hurt it at all. I have grown them in bags different times, and I think the success is okay. It really depends on the size of bag you're using, because some potatoes are much more vigorous when they're growing, and sometimes you just have to have an extra large bag. Where if it's more like fingerling potatoes that are very small and thin, you can have a smaller bag. And the only other thing to watch when you're growing them in a bag, Marie, is that they don't get too hot, because that can be a problem, and it can make it so they don't grow the size of potatoes that they want. So if you can have them have a lot of morning sun, but then where it's really hot sun in the afternoon, they're more in the shade, you'll be happier with, and it'll be more successful for you. And overworked garden, tell me about your pawpaws, because I have grown pawpaws several times, and I can get them through about the 3rd year, and then we will have an extremely cold winter and they die off. And so right now I have 4 pawpaws that I planted again last year, because I'm trying it again. And I've tried to shelter them. I've tried to do a whole bunch of different things. And when they're the young trees, I do keep them shaded, partway shaded. But our winters can just be killers for pawpaws, and I want to grow them because I like them. And so any tips that you can share with pawpaws, I would appreciate that, because there isn't anybody around here that grows pawpaws. But I like them, and so I would like to try to be successful with them. Now, you girls and guys that are down south, you're probably already in the ground or about to plant your stuff. Where our transplants, we can't do outside until about May 15th. Other than I'm going to make some little hoops, little ground hoops, and where I'm going to plant some of the kale and the cabbages that I am already grown in the greenhouse. I'm just waiting for them to get a little teeny bit bigger, and then I will do that. And for me, the tricks that I do when it's a transplant is that I always want to make sure that, if possible, I want to transplant them on a cloudy day. I want them to be already hardened off. And if I can shade them for the first few days that they're in the soil, I have found that just to be more successful. You know, there's no stress on them, and I just keep the soil moist but not soggy. And it's worked real well with our weather and our soils, which most of our soils in Wyoming are very, very clay. And I don't know if you guys have clay around, or if you have sand, or you have a loam, but clay soils can be so challenging. And so I always tell people when they're starting their seeds that use whatever containers you have. Oh, so it's your first time of doing pawpaws. I'm going to have to find a pawpaw grower. And so if any of you know somebody who grows pawpaws, send them my way, because I'm sure there's got to be tricks that I don't know about. But, you know, we're very cold in the wintertime. It's, we have dry, we're not humid, where a lot of times pawpaws grow where it's much more humid. But somehow I'm going to be able to do this. A lot of people here in Wyoming also make raised beds because of the clay soil. And we have some raised beds also. And I think that they can be just so spectacular because you get to decide what goes into that soil. And here in Wyoming, most of the time our raised beds are very shallow because of our winds come through and they lift up the moisture in that soil and they take it with them. Where if you're really humid, it's very much better if your raised beds are taller. Now, the exception in Wyoming for tall raised beds is if you're handicapped, if you're getting older. And so our two newest raised beds that we did are very high. They're probably about 2.5, almost 3 feet tall, because I told Joe, I'm getting older and I might not want to bend over all the time. Hi, Betty Boo Homestead, how are you? And I just think that anytime you have really hard soil, why not do a raised bed? I find it's simple, it's easy. You don't have to worry about treated wood anymore because the treated wood is now treated with copper versus the other stuff, the carcinogen stuff that they used to do. And so then you're safe. And you're right, Marie, they can be so pleasing. I have seen so many very cool designs using corrugated metal. We use just wood, but that was easy and it was available. And so I just think it's an easy, great way to control your soil. And, you know, I like both sizes. We have some really short raised beds, and then we have our big, tall raised beds. I like them both, but I think the older I get, the more I'm going to want taller raised beds, just because you're not bending over all the time. Now, I like to plan my gardens out. And I'm not sure about you guys, but do you actually put your garden on paper? Because what I have found is that I am much more efficient inside my garden if I do that. And you are very lucky when you have wonderful soil. We can't say the same thing. Hi, Homesteading North Michigan, how are you? But the thing about planning your garden out, the thing that I think is really cool about it is that you're just not haphazardly going, oh, I'm going to put these here, here, and then you're not as efficient with your seeds and your plants, because sometimes we overcrowd them or we space them up too far. But if you do it on like grid paper, That's what I like to use. It's just so much easier. Is it a beautiful day in Michigan? Do you have snow at all? We have about 6 inches. And I hope just like you're saying, I hope everybody is staying healthy. We went to go to the grocery store today, and we haven't been to the grocery store in a couple weeks. And we got there, and it was so packed with cars in the parking lot. I looked at Joe and I said, let's go another day. And so we turned around and we went home. And not that Wyoming has very many cases. I think right now we're up to like 162 for the whole state, which isn't bad. But it's, I don't know, it's just weird, and it gives you weird feelings. And so we just went home, and we thought we'd go another day. They have some days at the grocery stores that if you're a senior, if you're over 60, so we qualify for that, we can go at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they won't let anybody in unless you're over 60. So I think we're just going to do that Monday morning instead. It wasn't anything that we had to have. We weren't completely out of milk, but we just thought we'd get out of the house. But all we did was drive around and come back home. And we are about to open up our community gardens for the year. Now, you can choose when you're a community garden person, and you can be a year-round gardener, or you can just do the spring, summer, fall. And so the spring, summer, fall people are just about to be able to go into the garden middle of October. And I don't know if you guys have community gardens around your areas, but they have been just such a great blessing to people. I can't even tell you how many times people have told me that their trees have gotten too big in their yard, and so they don't have garden space anymore, or their soil is too clay, and so they don't have enough, they don't have any garden space. And so they come down to the community gardens, and we have 2 of them in our town, which is, we only have 30,000 people in Gillette. And so I think that's nice to have 2 community gardens. And one of them, 64 people have plots. And the other one, there's about 10. It's a newer garden, so it isn't established in some parts of it yet. But maybe an inch or 2 in spots. I must have missed part of that conversation. It's hard to watch the conversation and then do the part of the video at the same time. But who knew this? Because I'd never done a video, a live stream before. But I would like to know what you guys do when you start your seeds. Do you start them in plastic? Do you start them in your own paper pots? Do you save your yogurt containers? That I would just be interested in on the different things that people do. Marie, maybe you should see if you can start another community garden in North Texas. Because a lot of times you can go to the city and they have vacant lots. And a lot of times if you can give them a plan, hey, his way homestead. Anyway, if you give them a plan, they will they'll approve you, and it doesn't cost you any for the land. And sometimes you can twist a city council's arm, and they will actually put water to that if you can show them that you're going to open it up to the public. When we first started the community garden that we have, it was there wasn't as many people. But the county and the city did go together, and they ran the water lines for us, so we didn't have to pay for that. And so that might be something that might be possible. His Way Homestead won both my honey giveaway and my cheese giveaway. And it was so funny because My Slice of Heaven also did that. Hey, Nancy, how are you? So I was just shocked that when we drew out the names, because we had 4 blocks of cheese to give away, that 2 of the winners had won my honey too. I thought, what are the odds of that? And Another thing that you can do this springtime that is you can take all of your garden tools and clean them up. Because a lot of times in the fall, we're so busy, we're harvesting and we're processing all of our stuff. And all of our tools just went into the shed or they went into the garage. So that's a perfect time in early spring, especially if you're not in the garden yet or you haven't done your pots yet. It's a perfect time for you to just clean up all those tools. I like to use an oil. It helps smooth it out. It helps it not to be rusted. And I've really found that the tools that I actually spent more money on are really in the long run the tools that last me a lifetime. Though when you very first start, I am all in favor of going to garage sales and just picking up tools for a couple dollars. And so I just find that interesting. That though I'm not sure this spring it'll be easy to find tools at garage sales because so many more people are doing gardens this year. And sometimes at the community gardens, if you have a plot and then they don't fill up the whole 64 people, you can go into a lottery to get another plot. But it looks like this year there will not be an extra plot at all. But so many new people doing gardens. Anyone have good ideas on how to keep goats out of your garden? Electric fence, maybe? Because that's, a lot of times people will use electric fences to make the paddocks for the goats. And perhaps maybe that's what you're going to have to do to get those to stay out. Anybody else have ideas? I have started my seeds in solo cups lots of times. I've started them in styrofoam cups. And, I'm trying not to use plastic this year at all. So everything is in paper pots or they are in just the soil blocks. And there's a little machine like thing that makes the soil blocks. It's very compact and it just stays. It doesn't, when it gets wet, it doesn't just crumble it into just regular soil again. And so I'm doing some of those. Actually, I think that's true, that when you're cleaning, you do find, oh, I need to replace this rivet. I need to, sometimes I will have a handle of a tool that it's just too old, it gets so old and I don't really want to replace it yet because it's not broken, but it gets very weathered. And so sometimes I will, if linseed oil won't work, I will just paint it with an outdoor paint. And so they'll just last longer and longer. But there are some really nice shovels that I've had that I never want to get rid of. And so all I do is replace the handle. If it's gotten too bad, I just replace the handle. But the metal is still so good, I hate to get rid of it. I've been having issues with my chickens getting into mine. So finally I locked those little buggers up. Well, it's true. Some chickens that, you meet people with chickens and they are so good in their gardens that they just get the worms and the bugs, and then other chickens, they want to eat everything. And so I don't know how you train the chickens to be good in your garden. Some people are just lucky, I think. But one other thing I wanted to talk about. How many of you have done a soil test in your garden? And if you did a soil test, how long ago has it been since you did yours? Oh, see, I use paper pots all the time and I haven't had that problem of them drying up, but I set my paper pots in a container that doesn't have holes in it. And so I have to be more careful that I don't get it too wet and that it gets too soggy. And so, but I just don't want it to dry out. So I could understand that your paper pots could dry out fast because they can, because Texas is hot. And, every gardener has their own tips and tricks on what they do. And that's why it's fun to be able to exchange ideas and just go, okay, this is what I do, or this doesn't work for me, so I've done this. I think you should do soil tests about every 3 to 5 years. But when you very first started a garden, you should do it just because you need a baseline. When we very first started our garden at the house that we live at now, the pH on it was 8.2. That is so alkaline. And we had things that would grow, but they didn't thrive. They were very, some of them were stunted. Some of them would be very weird that you didn't really get a lot of produce from. But we just kept adding compost and leaves and manures and straws. And when we first had our yard, we didn't even have worms. I remember Joe coming home one day and I go, how can I garden without any worms? How is that possible? But now, every shovel you go, there's just worms everywhere. But it's just a matter of keeping them going and always continually adding stuff to your soil. Because sometimes we think, oh, I've added this year, so it's fine. Your plants use up nutrients. Things get washed away. Things seep deeper into the soil. So it's a continuous process of adding things to your soil if you want your plants and your vegetables to be the best that they can be. I have heard of people pouring the vinegar on their soil and it bubbling up. I find that very interesting that it can do that. But like, my soil is above neutral, which is 7. And so even though it's gone way down from the 8.2, and so I can grow a lot of things, but I want to grow blueberries too. And so blueberries like acidy soil, which we don't have acidy soil, but I still grow blueberries because there's an acidifier that you can add if you have rhododendrons or azaleas. And so I just work that into the soil every year around my blueberries. And it seems to be good enough, but I have to do it every single year or it wants to go back up to that alkaline side. So is there things that you guys grow that you really shouldn't be able to grow, but you do it anyway? Because like we're a zone 4B. And so we're not supposed to be able to grow cherries, Bing cherry lights, cherries. We can grow the sour cherries. And they told me I couldn't grow peaches. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 peach trees. And we ate peaches last year, even though they had hail damage on them, because at the end of the summer we had this humongous hailstorm. But it didn't matter. I still ate them. And they were still good, even though they had hail dents in them. Thing might say. So our snow should melt in like 2 days. In fact, today got 35 degrees from the cold weather we had in the morning. And I can already see across on the parking lot, there's a school across from us. And the snow is all melting over there. And so I would probably guess it won't be long and we'll be back in business. His Way Homestead, thank you so much for stopping by. Wife has too many honeydews for me. Well, tell her if you're doing honeydews that you could eat some of that honey that she's been restricting you with. So thank you so much for stopping by. But honestly, everyone, unless you have some other questions, I am going to let you go because I thought, well, it's my very first one. When is my next giveaway? Well, I'm almost at 500. And so when I get to 500, that is my next giveaway. And I haven't decided what to give away yet. And any suggestions of what I should give away? Because I think I was at 470 something this morning, maybe 476, something like that. So when I get to 500, I'll have a giveaway. But thanks so much for stopping by. And thanks for coming by on my very first live that I have ever had, other than when I was on the other day just to make sure that the voice was working. Oh, I'm at 486, so that's even higher than it was earlier. Thanks so much. So in 14 more people, I will be giving a giveaway. So you should let me know what you think I should give away. So thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll try to figure out how this goes and it records so that it's actually on YouTube, how I save it. Thanks so much, but stay safe, be careful, keep your social distancing, wear your mask and your gloves when you go places, and I will see you next time. So thanks so much.